So welcome everyone to the Chestermere Historical Foundation's presentation today on May 17th of the history of Lakeside Golf Course. So I'm very pleased to welcome members of the Lakeside Preservation Society. We have with us Alan Malott, Joe Samulenuk, and Warren Smandic. And I'd ask if everyone could please mute themselves so that we don't have sounds from the background, please. So Roy and Rose, if you can mute yourselves, and Peter, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And at the end of the program, we'll unmute and you can have questions if you'd like. Peter, can you mute, please?
Hello.
Good. Could everyone please mute? I'm just looking for how to do that. Mute all. Okay, there we go. Good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over now to our presenters. And we'll put the program up. Would you like me to just put the PowerPoint up right away?
Sure.
Okay. Good. Good. So I'm going to turn this over to Joe right now, and he's going to begin the presentation. Thank you, fellas,
Thanks
for coming and doing this.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Samulenuk, and I'm on the board of directors with the Lakeside Golf Course Preservation Society. Now, our mission is to make sure that the golf course is not subject to destruction and redevelopment. And we've been active since October of 2020. The speakers today, I'm just doing the introduction. My name is Joe Samulenuk. The speakers today will include the very earliest days of the golf course development, because it is a historical foundation event. And for that, we've got Alan Malott. Now, Alan was on the first town council immediately following when Chestermere turned from the summer village of Chestermere to the town of Chestermere. And he has some foresight into how the whole golf course approach from the developers came in. And knowing Alan, he'll have some opinions. And then he will hand it off to Warren Smandic. Now, Warren was, if not the first, he was certainly among the very first residents of the community, which was built and surrounded on the inner and outer portions of the golf course. So he will have that perspective to add as the community evolved and developed. And then finally, I will take it through its kind of evolutionary growth years, because the golf course has been here almost 30 years. And things evolve and things change over time. And as of a couple of years ago, specifically October of 2020, the golf course became rather newsworthy. So I will touch on some of its activities during its evolution, because it's been around a long time, and then end with an update on what's been going on relative to destruction or development of the golf course. So having said that, I will turn it over to my friend Alan Malott.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting us do this. This is amazing. We'll start off with the plans coming together. In 1990, initial meetings began with the Village of Chestermere Council and Lakeside Greens, Inc. Developers to bring a potential golf course and residential area to the town. There were several meetings back and forth, consultations, negotiations back and forth with the mayor and council of the day. Some of the meetings, I understand, were very strong. The main selling point of this development was the offer to bring Calgary water to Chestermere, which was very attractive to our village at the time. If you were a coach, and I was a coach in Calgary, and I brought my sports teams to Chestermere, we had to bring our own water for the hockey team. We didn't know that the first time. We certainly did after. So we had to bring our own water from town for our teams, and try and have a bunch of boys, 12 and 13 years old, playing a hockey game with no water. That was not much fun. So we learned our lesson. So that was very attractive for the town to for this development. And there were a lot of concessions on both sides, including streets, street lights, of course, and of course roads and off-site levies. There were a lot of conversations with the council that possibly could include. Now, I had a few meetings with the former mayor Elaine Peak on some of the things that happened in those meetings, and some of the offers were for seniors to get an equity membership. All the seniors in town. There was only 1,100 people or 1,000 people. I don't know how many were seniors. If they did it now, it would have been pretty funny, but somehow that promise never made it. I'm not sure why. And I talked to Elaine, and she wasn't sure why that never came to fruition. But that was one of the promises, that Chestermere seniors were going to get equity memberships. And I thought, wow, I would have voted for that if I was a senior in those days. I certainly would have liked to get a free membership. The excavation begins. So after all these meetings in 1991, the agreement was signed and construction started on our beautiful golf course. And it wasn't without problems though, because there wasn't enough dirt for land. We were way short of dirt. A lot of fill had to be brought in. And we had to, not we, but the developer had to dig down on our land to get the water traps, and they had to make it a lot deeper. 30 feet they had to dig in some areas to use the dirt. That's why when you lose your ball in this golf course, you're never going to find it unless you're good and you can hit it right on the end. So that was a huge problem. In late winter, Parade of Homes, in late winter of 1991, in the home section of the Calgary Herald was an article about a new housing and golf course development in Chestermere that would open in the summer of 92. The parade would open in the spring, and we were on our way. There was a grand opening of homes, of show homes, and the only way you could, it was a wonderful parade of homes right on Lakeside Greens Drive, backing onto the 16th fairway, and lots were $45,000 to $55,000, and the memberships were $10,000. Sounds like quite a deal now, but that was pretty expensive 30 years ago for a lot. And one of the problems was you could not just buy a lot. You had to buy a lot and a house, and you had to buy it from a builder, which I thought was very unfair. I was a builder, and I wanted to live in Chestermere. I wanted to come here, but I wasn't able to buy a lot. Nobody would sell it to me. And so I got contacted by one of the show home builders, which was Morrison Homes, who offered to get the house to the drywall stage, and I would be able to take it over from there. For me, that was a no-go also, because I was a builder. I could build my own house. I could frame my own house. So that didn't go. I tried to negotiate, but they wouldn't budge. They wouldn't budge on the lot. So I didn't know quite what to do, but then all of a sudden there was a new phase opening right across from the existing golf course. That was phase 2, the part I'm going into now, Lakeside Greens phase 2 and 3. And we applied to join the Parade of Homes, which worked out very well because we were accepted. Didn't make some of the builders very happy, but I was very happy about it because I could actually build my own house. And it was great. And it was right across the street from the golf course where the Parade of Homes was. And in August '92, full course opened. I moved in on July 1st, 1992. And the golf course wasn't open yet. Only the driving range was open in July of '92. But in August '92, the golf course opened fully, and we ended up with a Atco double wide trailer as a clubhouse. Actually, it sounds kind of funny now, but it was very effective clubhouse for us. In 1992, there was a civic election for mayor and council of our village, but that council was disbanded in 1993 because Chestermere was coming to town, and two of the members on that council stayed on until our election in October. And that's where I ran for my first 4 terms in Chestermere. So my total stint on Chestermere was 11 years on council. And I know people ask me, why were you 11 years? Doesn't make any sense with 3-year terms. But the first year I wasn't on. So my first term was for 2 years. Now, my very first meeting of, we had an election for mayor and 6 councilors, and many of the meetings of at the start were on drainage problems on Lakeside Greens, and they were horrible. On the 16th hole, every time it rained, those houses flooded. It was not all of them, but it was horrible drainage on that hole. And we had lots and lots of meetings with the developer and the engineer, and we finally got that repaired by having a grass berm. We wanted a cement berm. They wouldn't do it. They didn't really have to do anything, and the insurance companies in those days, and maybe now even, didn't cover seepage. So all these poor people flooded along that area, and they had no coverage. And the builder couldn't help them because it wasn't his fault. That was the drainage. So my first meetings of council, that was brought up several times about flooding, and also it was brought up about offsite levies and how the developer got away with not paying a lot of offsite levies and what's called endeavor to assist, paying for roads that abut the areas and paying their share until other people butt into it, and they didn't have to. That was part of the agreement, or something was signed. I'm not sure of the meetings in those days, but that was huge. That was really huge for the town. We finally did get that berm in, and it did help, but a lot of my meetings were about that. It was very, very tough. And when the developer first came to the golf course, and the announcement was that the golf course was being sold, and I couldn't wait, honestly, to get up from the microphone and say, my first meetings of council, all I heard about was offsite levies and the honey deal that you made on the roads. And my answer, instead of an answer, was not my problem. Nobody cared. So that was very, very frustrating for me. We tried our best to do what we could for the drainage of that golf course, but it didn't happen. We started a junior golf program. I shouldn't say we, Lakeside Greens did, which is awesome. Since 1992, this golf course has provided employment for a lot of young people, keeping them off the street. And if you would go by on a Monday or a Tuesday night and watch how many junior golfers that we have out there, young kids, 8, 10, 12, and dressed in full golf attire. It's really something to see. You have to go by and just have a look at it. It gives you a nice warm feeling. I put down on here lesson learned. In my very first meeting of council of a whole, not with our CAO, just councilors and the mayor, one of our members of council brought an offer to our council that he could, or she, I won't say who it is, I don't think that's fair, very attractive offer to buy one of our parks for $1 million. We had 1,100 people and somebody was offering $1 million for a park. It sounded pretty attractive at first. We did not realize though that somebody got a hold of the Rocky View paper and the Calgary Sun and the Herald. And if you're ever going to get lynched, try to do something like that without one of the people first. So we learned a very valuable lesson. And so we decided that we would have an open house. Probably Bill and probably Jen probably came to that meeting because somebody was going to sell a park and they were not, people were very, very upset about it. And when questions were asked before we went to the meeting, one of the members of council called our lake a slough. This is the member of council. God, I'll never forget how that meeting went, but I honestly thought we were going to get lynched that night, but it never ever came up again after that information night. Never came to council. We never talked about it. It was over. And that's why I put on here, lesson learned. The developer that purchased this golf course, Lakeside Golf Course, he doesn't live here. We asked the developer in the meetings if he ever golfed here. He said no, but he did walk the course once. I guess that's how you, you know, in the election forum, we asked all the councilors and if they were in favor or not in favor of this development. All 7 were unanimous. This development won't happen. This group that we have, we're going to hold these guys to that promise. I just want everyone to know that when you lose something like a golf course or a park, you lose it forever. Thank you. I will ask Warren, lovely Warren, I'm sorry, Mandich, to speak now. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Good afternoon, everybody. As you've been told, and it'll be the last time I am, Warren Smandich. I've been involved with the golf course ever since I moved into Chestermere. And for me, that was quite an experience because I was the first resident in Lakeside. And I'll always remember the day when Elaine Peak came to my house, rang the doorbell, and stood there with a bouquet of flowers for myself and my wife at the time and our children, and congratulated us for coming in. I thought, you know what? I'm moving in to a pretty good neighborhood. And how I got here was kind of interesting. There was a number of people that were put together as a group, and I'm not sure whether or not it was the movie at the time or whether it's just because they met for breakfast once a week, but they were called Breakfast Club. And they were made up of, I think it was 6 or 7 gentlemen. There was a couple of lawyers, there was an engineer, there was a businessman, a pharmacist, a fellow that had a couple of businesses, a bit of an entrepreneur. And how they met, I don't know, but during one breakfast meeting, somebody came up with this idea, let's build a golf course. And oh, I just happened to be driving down 17th Avenue going east from Calgary, and there's a corner by Chestermere that looks ideal to put a golf course on. So they all got together and they decided, okay, let's go at the time, talk to the Summer Village and see what we can do. Well, of course, it wasn't just the golf course, it was these hundreds of houses that were going in as well. And the town at the time knew, as Alan alluded to, that there were water problems here. And my boss at the time was the veterinarian that lived on West Chestermere Drive, Bob Sturm, and he had pretty much shut down most of his practices and went and started working with the Department of Agriculture, where I was for 36 and a half years of my life. And he was telling me about the stuff that was going on out at Chestermere. And of course, I had nothing, heard nothing. He knew I golfed. And, but he was telling me that they're going to be bringing, I think I made a comment, something like, well, I don't know if I want to live out there because my boss had to come in and brought in these great, huge blue camping jugs and filled them up with water from our office at whichever plant we happened to be working at. I said, what are you doing? So I'm taking water home. I said, why? And he said, well, we need drinking water. And I came out to his house and I looked at some of his fixtures just by using the washroom or going to the kitchen. Oh my gosh, I could see that there were some issues with alkali, iron, and a host of other things. So of course I wasn't the one that really thought I'd want to be moving out here. But then he was telling me they put forth a cost of sharing agreement to help at the time Summer Village of Chestermere to bring water out from Calgary. All of a sudden, the word was getting out. There were flyers delivered to every person that lived in Chestermere. There were flyers that were then brought in by those people into the city. And my boss at the time, I was working at my desk diligently one day, I want to add, but anyways, he threw this thing down and he said, you might be interested. And I looked at it and what interested me was the golf course. And I thought, this is great. Nice and close to Calgary. I can get into town in a hurry. This won't be a big deal. Well, all of a sudden, the word started getting out. I saw something in the newspaper, new golf course coming to Calgary. And remember, at the time, golf industry was very vibrant. And there were golf courses being built everywhere. And it would be a bit of a challenge, I guess, because of the competition. But the word was getting out. There were little bits on the radio every now and then about building a Chestermere. So this is what we ended up with. Alan had alluded to the fact that you were unable to buy a lot. I think I was the only person that actually called one of their salesmen who was kind of a shirt tail relation of the Breakfast Club. And I told him, I said, I want to buy a membership and I want to buy a lot. And he stumbled a bit and I purchased a lot and I got a heck of a deal, I thought at the time, and chose my lot because they hadn't gone out to the developers yet. And there you go. I started with building my house. Of course, I had to go to my lawyer. My lawyer was looking at the paperwork and he said, so you're going to do this? I said, oh yeah. And he says, you know, if they don't build a golf course, there's nothing you can do. And I thought, oh my God, they got to. So I started building. I was my own general contractor and I had friends that were excavators and a friend that was a surveyor, and we were doing all of this. And I'm looking around and there's a bunch of machinery around and nothing is moving. And I think, and all I can hear in the back of my mind is my lawyer saying, there's nothing you can do if they don't build a golf course. And I was kind of starting to get worried, especially I had my foundation in, I had first floor in the house, and I'm starting to get a little bit scared. Finally, the earth movers started moving and you could see that land was just scraped down. As Alan said, they were building or putting in ponds like you can't imagine. And all this dirt coming out was absolutely amazing. But I felt a lot better. I felt a lot safer. And as Alan said, they knew that they needed more dirt for the golf course and the contouring. So some of these ponds, we had some pictures. I don't know if we got them in there, but some people had built out at the on the course. One fellow in particular, his wife they had a picture of her on the pond just off of West Chestermere Drive on our probably one of the holes that you can see of par 3. She's so far down in this pond that she looks like a little ant in there. It's absolutely amazing, but they started getting it out. And then I started feeling good because one day I just happened to notice they put a pump shack in just over here on the corner with the water going into the lake, and they were drawing water from the lake for the golf course, went all the way around behind down 17th Avenue. And the first pond that you see off of 17th Avenue is the pond that feeds the entire golf course. It feeds the pond between 12 and 13 over to 3 by 2, and then it's pumped from there to the other side of the golf course. So for the longest time, I was, as I said, I was the first one there, and I was the only one there. The Burtons were started building, and then the Woods started building just as you turn in onto Lakeside Greens Drive, and they're the only houses. And again, I was starting to get a little concerned, but before you knew it, there were developers everywhere. And this is what Alan was talking about. There was a few homes that were developed, and all of a sudden there were developers everywhere. And as he said, there was going to be the parade of show homes, and homes are going up like crazy. And then all of a sudden we realized we had to get moving on the second and third phase for the golf course. Because the golf course still wasn't moving, there wasn't much impact for the town by this time. However, the people that had moved in had gone through some growing pains. What do we do for mail delivery? All of a sudden, community mailboxes were put up, waste delivery, snow removal off the roads, which a lot of us were accustomed to in the city, but it all came to pass. So the next summer comes around and we're wondering, we have grass, it's starting to grow, we've got trees planted, where's the clubhouse? By this time, the golf course had hired on contract Club Pro, who at the time was Lloyd McBean, and a manager for the golf course, Marty Allred, who ran a golf school in Calgary for a number of years. His family did. And I got to meet these guys. I said, so where's our clubhouse? And they happened to get a deal on some trailers. And I honestly believe it was from a previous golf course that had used them before they moved out to Chestermere. So we had our club storage, we had a restaurant, we had offices. I don't think we had our locker room, but you know, as Alan said, it was more than sufficient. One of the interesting proposals was that the course tried at the time, the big house on West Chestermere Drive that has the smoke dome roof over it. The course was going to buy that and use that as an interim clubhouse, actually put a tunnel underneath West Chestermere Drive. And while the golf course, of course, they thought it was just going to be a going concern, they'd make enough money to be able to sell that house and then build the clubhouse on the golf course. But as we know, that didn't really come about. So as I said, they brought in the trailers, and by this time the houses were going strong, and all of a sudden we heard the Breakfast Club is gone. They're not going to be around anymore. They started coming up with an offer to purchase the clubhouse from our then golf professional, with the promise of a new clubhouse at no cost to the members. And for those that don't golf, you have to understand that when you join a golf course, most golf courses are set up, particularly private and semi-private golf courses, you pay an annual fee every year in order to golf. If things need to be upgraded on the golf course, they have levies that are assessed or assessments against the members. This was not going to be part of this particular golf course. We were going to have no assessments to members for anything. They were going to hold our increases to our memberships to cost of index as per Calgary cost of index, or the inflation rate, whichever was great. And as members, we thought that this was pretty good. It was accepted, and they started to construct the clubhouse. And as you can see, our clubhouse now was substantially better than the trailers that we had. But they did manage to sell those trailers to somebody else, and away we went. The membership that was agreed to at the time, there were a number of things that were brought up. It was the no assessments, men's and ladies groups and seniors groups that have dedicated time so that they could go out to the golf course and play, which again is a little different than many golf courses. Our golf course, a man and a wife can go golfing, or a husband and wife can go golfing together at 8 o'clock in the morning. There are so many golf courses. If the man wants to golf, they golf from 8 until 10. And if the ladies want to golf, they golf from 10 until 12. And if you want to golf together, you golf afterwards. So many things made so much sense for the members here. The ability to use private golf carts and assess a small charge in order for wear and tear on the golf course. One of the only clubs left in Calgary that still allows personal golf carts to be used on the golf course. There was other things that had happened that I think were really quite good for Chestermere. While the golf course was being built, there was a number of events that were held in order to raise money for the food bank. One of the biggest things was the Stars Air Ambulance golf-a-thon that was held. And just, I don't know whether any of you know, the golf course and that tournament raised so much money in giving it to Stars that Lakeside Greens, not only is it just Lakeside Greens, is on the helicopter for being a large contributor. It also says Chestermere. So it's Lakeside Greens at Chestermere, and trust me, the word Chestermere is probably going to be remembered by more that see that on one of the Stars Air ambulances than the golf course itself. You know, the golf course offered so much for people in the southeast and northeast part of Calgary. There's a number of people that come out from all over the city, and it's just a great place to go. So many people socialize. When I was living here and still, as I am still a member of the golf course, I got to meet an awful lot of people. It was probably one of the only communities in Calgary that I've lived in and that my friends have lived in that I got to meet as many people as I did, not just because of golf, but just because the community was set up. When I was here, Bill Porter's place was the only place to go for gas. It was the only place to go for something to eat. And look at it now. It's absolutely incredible. So understand that the amount of people that come to Chestermere to golf, it's, yes, they're going to Lakeside Greens, but overall, they're coming to Chestermere. And what they do for the businesses out here because of the golf course, because they need gas, they want a bite to eat, they want to buy something, they got to pick something up at the store on the way home rather than fight the traffic in the city. They'll come here. It was a wonderful experience for me. I thank you for your time. Thanks. Okay, Joe.
All right, hit the last slide. You'll be targeting through them a little quicker for me because rather than have speaking notes, I just go on about the points. So I arrived here in the mid-90s and joined the club, I and my wife, and the neighborhood had barely been established around the golf course. What was great about it, it was every demographic. Now, Chestermere started as a recreational community. It was a lake community. Then it became a rec center and lake community. And then it evolved to a golf course and rec center and lake community. All of that had an appeal for those moving here. It appeared to be a town where you could move and be active and recreational and move around in that town, and it was very appealing. And what happened once the fresh water arrived was Chestermere experienced explosive growth. I had no idea when we moved here. I think there were 1,500 people. I had no idea that we'd be at 20,000 or 22,000. But that was largely brought on by widening the amenities that are available day to day in Chestermere. Membership of the course was capped at 230. That allows a lot of public play. So there's a lot of people who live in Chestermere. They golf, but they don't golf as often as myself or Warren or Alan. But they golf nonetheless. They just pay their green fees to go out and have a good time. The restaurant in the golf course was designed like a neighborhood pub, and that was intentional, so that the nearby neighborhood that wanted to drop in, because back then there weren't that many restaurants in Chestermere, but the Lakeside Golf Course itself had a pub-like atmosphere, and it appealed to the community at large. And of course, the community can participate in men's, ladies, juniors, and those are sold out. I mean, the men's and ladies and juniors are sold out every year, quickly, within days of being offered. There's astounding levels of public play and industry growth in golf. And we think part of it is evolutionary. So Chestermere's demographic, just as when I moved here, and I have done, is I've aged, and all of my neighbors with their kids and so on, the kids are gone and so on. And that happens almost in every neighborhood you live in. What's interesting now, and especially in the last 2 or 3 years, is we've got kids in the neighborhood again. And so younger people have moved, what I call younger people, have moved in and their kids are with them. And it's that second generation of activity in our community. And that second generation is finding its way to the golf club. The recent threat of destruction of the golf course would have a devastating impact, we believe, on Chestermere, because it is the amenities and the activities that brought so many of us out here to start with. And so to have it abandoned would be a terrible thing. Even now, new home sales in Chestermere list the lake, of course. They sometimes talk about local hockey in the rec center. They always list the golf course as a nearby amenity to where you're buying your home. Even in these new areas that we're seeing on the far west end of town, the flyers from the real estate agents invariably show a golf course as part of the community. Also, what's interesting about it is that the golf course has become, it's inner city parkland in general, and it's become a mini ecosystem. There are unusual hawks, Swainson hawks, which are protected in Alberta. We had someone check, and there's 24 bird species on the course currently, and one unusual player. So if you remember the earlier discussions about the golf course being boggy and drainage issues and so on, well, it turns out that it's an environment for the largest salamander, I think, in North America, called the tiger salamander. And the tiger salamanders burrow around boggy areas and pond areas, and they don't even know how they reproduce. The interesting thing about them is Alberta government has suddenly recognized their diminished numbers. They are now called a species of interest. And that species lives on hole number 3, hole number 12, and in the backyards of a few of my friends who live on it. So it's interesting to note that it is an ecosystem and something that shouldn't be abandoned. Also, the roads that were built around the golf course were meant for the community and the houses around the golf course, and adding more houses in the inner city is just crazy. And we don't know what the impact would be on infrastructure, but it would be pretty noticeable. We formed ourselves when we saw the false and misleading press releases that were issued in October of 2020, a date that will live in infamy, because they wrote these articles in a number of publications in order to make people feel unempowered. So the article was written as if it was a done deal, that the golf course was going to be destroyed, they're going to plug in their houses, and that was the end of that. That's kind of the standard playbook for these destructive developers, is that they will go in and try and make you feel unempowered or disenfranchised. And we are neither. People in Chestermere are neither unempowered nor are we disenfranchised. So we went out into the community to make sure they understood The new people that moved here didn't understand that they weren't empowered, or that they were unempowered. And so we organized a bunch of volunteers to go door to door and say, you realize you can stop this. Like, this is not a done deal. And the council before this one was subject to a huge amount of criticism, as if they had somehow approved it, which of course they had not. They'd never been approached. But it's the kind of preparatory groundwork that a destructive developer will do in order to lay the ground for, now we'll just go get it actually done. The uncomfortable part for us as a group is that one of the major interest holders is a developer, and he's made a financial investment. He's not an operating partner per se. He doesn't run the golf course, but he's made an investment in the golf course, which was allowed by one of the partners in the golf course. He's probably going to stick around for a while. And we realized as a society, we have to stick around for a while too. So we're organized as a nonprofit. We were extremely active during the municipal elections, so that we made sure that everyone running for council was both aware that they're empowered and aware that the community didn't want this. We will stick around. We have board of directors. We've already added and subtracted directors as the needs required, committees involved with press releases and so on. Somebody who is terrific at making driving volunteer organizations. We literally knocked on thousands of doors in Chestermere, making sure people understood not only this wasn't a done deal, but they could stop it. It's unsettling for us that all the current large shareholders of the golf course are non-residents. They don't really have a stake in our amenities. They don't have a stake in our community. And that's not comfortable for us. But nonetheless, that's the reality that we're dealing with currently. But they don't live here. And so no matter what they did to the community, wouldn't really bother them. We did finally kind of look at motives. So what would be the motive of a developer? Well, it turns out they're not doing it just to be mean, although it certainly felt that way. They're doing it for something that is politely called financial self-interest. So when you destroy an inner city parkland or an inner city golf course, you're surrounded by already paved roads. You're surrounded by water services. You're surrounded by sewage. You have people clearing snow on those nearby streets. You have cable and TV service right on the fringe of your so-called development. A non-destructive developer who develops on the outskirts of our city, as all have done so far, they have to invest to get those things happen. And it's millions. So a destructive developer is trying to avoid those costs and simply make more money. So that's what it's all about. We uncovered the real answer to what's going on here almost by accident, because there are some business people in Chestermere that were interested in owning and operating the golf course. They recognized the value to the community, the degree to which they could increase its popularity by being better participants in local business groups and local clubs and so on, which current investors have not been strong in doing. There were three in 2021 that had made offers to buy and operate the golf course, because they thought, well, maybe this guy just wants out and we'll do that. We'll just buy it. Well, one of the offers was for considerably more than the net worth of the golf course, but all of them have been ignored. And there's a reason for that. We think the developer is playing the lottery. Maybe one day we'll elect a council that doesn't know any better and will approve rezoning. Because after all, the land needs to be rezoned to be developed. We don't think our potential councilors now or in the future are that naive, but we exist as an organization to make sure they're not. And that's our purpose, and that's what we're doing now. It is a wonderful golf club. As Warren said, the members and the demographics within the golf club are changing. There was a period of time in the let's say 2010 to 2015, or maybe a little before that, when the demographic was aging, but there were no 30-somethings playing golf. But that's changed. We've got a lot of younger members right now. They're very active. They're very good participants at the bar, I'm told. And overall, it's just, again, regaining its strength as a community contribution, as a community amenity. So we're here to make that happen and make sure that happens. And since we've been around so long, we could actually speak to the history of where this all began. So I thank you for your time. And hopefully that helps you guys catch up on where we are in the news and where the golf course is. And we'll keep you posted. We've got our organization. You'll see press from time to time, updating you on anything that's happening. Right now, our sense is that nothing will happen while this current council sits, because nobody on council is in favor of development of the golf course. And with the existing municipal development, as far as I understand it, the MDP, Municipal Development Plan, with the existing plan, the land won't really be rezoned unless that plan is rewritten. So, and there appears to be no interest in our council for that. So we know that this will survive one council period. But we want to stick around and make sure it survives more than one. So that's where we're at right now. We think we're into a comfortable 2 to 3 years, and then, you know, we'll bring those committees in to get active with the press again, bring our volunteers out, and make sure everybody understands what's happening next. So that's where we are.
And I just add one more thing that I did forget. That park that was offered $1 million for, that's our beach. So that's
Yeah.
what that would be. So just out of interest, I forgot.
And that's what happens when you extract land from the community. So, all right, but thank you, and thank you.
So before the three gentlemen, and I just want to say again, thank you very much for that very complete presentation. And I think some of us who thought we knew about this have found out we didn't know all the facts. So there was lots to know about. So for the participants who are here and online, and we have 6 people who've joined by Zoom. If you have any questions, please unmute and ask your question, or if there are people in the audience who would like to ask a question, please do. I think we've had a hand up in the audience already.
So we were to be presently to do with that our current mayor was doing
So I always preface answers about our current council and mayor with, remember that we are an apolitical group. We don't support specific councilors or specific mayors. Our impression though is that our current mayor is excited about development in our community. But the people from the golf course that are shareholders in the golf course have met with the mayor. He's made it clear to them that they're not rezoning the golf course while he's in the chair. Yes.
My name is Jerry Blanchard. I've offered to sell my land to the city at a real good rate to the wildlife park. Thanks for enlightening me. The problems would seem to be the same as mine. We're supposed to start discussions.
Right.
But what worries me is I think the mayor's in favor of it, but I don't know about the council.
Well, and again, you have to remember, it is difficult. Remember that we all have to rely on our elected officials, and our only and appropriate recourse is to make sure they know what our thoughts are and know what our concerns are. When we became active as the preservation group for the golf course, those are the people we got to immediately. We got to the prior mayor, we got to the prior council. We found out whoever was running for council. We met with every one of them prior to them ever getting speed in their campaigns. And each one of them, to a person, assured us that they would not approve rezoning the golf course. If you have concerns.
If you guys have time later on, I got your names and address to consult with and show my place. Talk it over with you. I think you guys have experience on me.
We can, remember, we're a single mission group,
So am I.
but sure, no, I know. I'll share with you anything we know that might be helpful. I do know the current mayor is really excited about development around Chestermere, he really is. But he's aware of the community's thoughts on the golf course, so.
There's always somebody in the council shows negativity and everything like that.
I know.
Good. Well, thanks, Ray. Appreciate that.
Contract to make sure that everybody's on board. I'm not going to leave my place and find out that the developer wants to move in and start putting houses.
Well, and that's important. Remember, it's important to know how your land is currently zoned.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's.
So the private nature preserve, I don't know if that's a legal zone, to be honest. If the city takes the nature preserve, they have to keep it for 30 years.
You can find out from City Hall. City Hall will tell you what,
City Hall,
yeah.
But the main worry is, I don't know if somebody's gonna throw an ice bucket into the thing and just stop it dead in the tracks.
We feel your pain.
No, I was taking them to court and I decided to settle out of court because there was a lot more issues. Why take them to court? Because they flooded my property and killed some trees. That's one problem. But I still want it to be a park. I spent 50 years planting trees and everything on that property. I want it to be a park.
Well, there's definitely one common theme here is that we don't want to give up any land that could be a park or is a park. So, yeah. So thanks, Ray. That's great. And I can put you in touch with these gentlemen. Okay. Thank you. Good. So any other questions, Margaret, from the floor?
I'd just like to make a comment, and I think it's a very big thank you to the original of the golf course. My husband and I were out here with rezone since 1969 on Chestermere Drive.
Wow.
In 1990, he decided to build a new house in this cabin, which was partly an actual building. And the dog and boat and all that, they had all that, but we decided to build a house. So the first thing that Fred did was go to Chestermere and get a well witcher to get us a well witch in the front yard, and it was in the front yard. So he didn't know how to connect to some kind of water. We already had the sewer because the town, town had village who brought the sewer hooked up. But by the time we got the house built in 1991, there was an agreement with the golf course that, and we understood it to be that, they'll come out here with this golf course, but they needed water. And the town said, you can come, and we know you need water, so do we. We'll let you come out here, you make the big payment that we owe to the city to get water out here, and we'll all be happy, which is what happened.
Yeah.
I'm saying thank you very much for that group at that time.
Right.
It went to all the work to bring the water up to Chestermere.
It led to amazing growth.
Thank you, Margaret. Any other questions? Oh, I think Roy's got one. That's okay. Online. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jan. Actually, I have two questions, one directed to Warren. Who is the major interest holder that is a developer, Warren? Or is that privy?
Yeah.
It's
Who was the major interest holder at the time of development?
The name?
I'm not sure if there was anybody that had more of an interest than the group. As I said, everybody at the time all came in as this group of developers. There were people that had more expertise at the time. Gary Cork, who has been living on the golf course forever, he's the engineer, and I know he was the project manager for a lot of it. I honestly can't speak to what his total interest was in the group.
When I arrived, there appeared to be 4 major partners in the golf course. They were Gary Cork, Gary Cook, who lived on the lake. At the time, Marty Allred had just left, so I don't know if he had his interest still at that time. Lloyd McBean, and almost as a mystery investor, Wayne McBean. And I don't think there were any others at the time. It was almost a 4-way split. There were some really small interest holders, They used to call them the 1%ers scattered throughout the community, but you know, they weren't very influential on operations or the ownership.
Okay, thank you for that. When the society was first made and started their advertising campaigns, I thought I read somewhere in the newsletter where every city or town has to have a minimum of 24% of green space. Is that in fact true?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm not a municipal specialist at all. We do have people that are absolute regulars at town council, not on town council, but who attend regularly. And that would be best directed towards the municipality. I'm not sure that that's true.
Is 10% municipal reserve.
Yeah, we kind of doubt it.
And that encompasses school property. too.
School land as well.
Yeah, 24%, that's a huge. Part of all that. So I think, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it's around 10%. I got 10%.
So Bill was saying he
Okay.
thinks it might be more like 10%.
Man.
Okay,
Okay. That was your other question, Roy? I don't want to,
yes, it was. Thank you.
good questions. So Karen, I'm just gonna let Bill have his question. He had his hand up before you did, so you're next after him.
I thought Roy was gonna ask the same question. I was gonna ask, so who is the principal owner now? You know? Was that?
So because of recent changes in investment, we have to guess. Now, the major shareholder for some years was Wayne McBean.
Yeah.
And as a major shareholder, he bought up other people's shares. I know he bought Gary Corks and Gary Cooks. And then he took money from the developer called Slocker Homes, probably to buy those shares. But we don't know that for sure. Those agreements are between those business people. So as far as I can tell, there may be some very small interest holders still hanging on to their original shares. But right now, it's fair to say it is operated by Wayne McBean and partially funded in its current state by the developer.
So does that mean that Sloker has a vested interest monetarily?
Oh, they definitely have money in it. And that's why we think they're going to stick around. That's why we chose to stick around. Yes, they clearly have invested money in this golf course. They are not operators. They're not here mowing lawns or raking green, sand traps and greens, but they have a financial interest in the golf course as negotiated with Mr. McBean.
And they have walked the course.
Okay, thank you, Roy, for that subsequent question. And Karen, unmute and ask your question.
Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you for hosting this to the Historical Society. I didn't know much about the golf course, and you did a wonderful job of sharing all of the history. So thank you to all the speakers. My concern is goes back to a previous question about the nonpartisanship of this society. So first of all, can I just confirm the Lakeside Greens Preservation, it's a registered society, is that correct?
We are a registered society, nonprofit. We live on donations, and we, by and large, are volunteers from the community.
Right. So even though I'm not a golfer, I really appreciate the value that having a golf course in our community is, and I am fully in favor of it. During the election campaign, somebody who works with your organization, it was unclear whether or not they were actually a member or how, but they represent themselves as a member of the Preservation Society, posted on Facebook promoting specific candidates over other candidates who were running for election. I spoke out against that. I posted on Facebook that a nonpartisan organization should remain nonpartisan and not endorse any candidates while in election mode. There was a little bit of back and forth about that. Basically, I ended up offering an apology because I felt maybe I could have handled that better and presented that privately to your organization, my feelings on that. Is there something that you will do differently? Because what ended up is that Darby responded to say that that the Preservation Society did not endorse candidates and it was not their message, so they couldn't control it. I feel differently as the president of Rotary Chestermere and the vice president of Chamber of Commerce in Chestermere. I feel differently. I feel that when you're the organizer, it is your job to manage what posts go out there and to post a disclaimer and to encourage your supporters not to use your name. They can say whatever they want personally, but they should not invoke your society name when endorsing their choice of candidates. So that's how
I'm actually aware of the person who did that. And as quickly as we could, we stopped him. He was a volunteer, not a board member of the preservation group.
Right.
And he got a little bit carried away and we had to do some uncarrying.
Okay.
Because it's just not our mission. Our mission was never political.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So that's what I wanted to clarify is that on the next election, which is, in another, I think we're 2.5 years, if this is still a thing, do you have plans to manage that better so that it doesn't come up in the first place? Because it's very hard to unring a bell.
so speaking of unringing bells, we had one of the candidates who was running attach our signs to their campaign signs. And we had to scramble in the middle hours of the night to get those signs off and stop that from happening. So there were more instances than the one you're mentioning. And I guess in a way it makes us feel good because we were a cause that people were interested in. But the bad news side of it is sometimes they try to turn it in their own favor. But in fact, we never did have a board member as representing any political views whatsoever.
Okay, that answers that, Karen? Good.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. And I see Darby had her hand up. Are you going to speak, Darby?
I think she's just watching to make sure I don't say anything.
Well, she's got her hand up, which means she wants to say something. So I'm waiting to see if she's,
Well, Darby's in charge of our communications, so
she'll speak up.
works
if
with
she,
the press, and so we're very aware of our public messages to make sure that we deliver them properly. So no doubt she's keeping an eye on me.
yeah. So I think she's not coming on, so possibly you answered it sufficiently. So, and her hand's gone down. So any other audience questions before we wind up the afternoon program? No? Okay, well, I would just like to say a wonderful thank you to the three of you. You came so well prepared and so passionate about this. And we will make sure that we have our recording of the PowerPoint on our website to
Oh, that's
update
great.
the history, which we had sort of ending last fall with all the controversies. So appreciate you bringing that to us today, and we'll make sure that we have that update on our website.
That's perfect.
Good.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much.